and welcome to Daily Dictation. This is an interactive video that's meant to help you practice your English skills. So for this video, you are going to practice your listening skills and your writing skills. I am going to read 5 sentences to you, and you are going to write them down on a piece of paper or type them into a document exactly how you hear them. And you should do this daily dictation, to help you improve more and more every day. This video is for high intermediate English speaker. After you write down each sentence, I will show you the answers, the correct sentences, and explain the spelling and some of the sentence structures as well, some of the grammar and whatnot to help you improve and understand. Okay, so please join me for daily dictation from Monday to Friday. There are new sentences each weekday, new topics each week, and 2 English levels offered. The instructions. You will need a blank piece of paper and a pencil, or you can have a blank document that you can type into. 5 sentences will be read. Each sentence will be read 3 times and 1 more time at the end. You have to write down each sentence exactly how you hear it, and you will use your listening skills to try to apply the correct spelling, punctuation, and capitalization. Okay, so let's have a look at the screen here. We can see numbers 1 to 5. Each number represents a different sentence, so write down these numbers in your document or on your piece of paper. I'm going to start with sentence number 1. Number 1. Although she initially felt nervous about meeting her partner's in-laws, she found their convivial nature and shared values made her feel welcomed and appreciated. Although she initially felt nervous about meeting her partner's in-laws, she found their convivial nature and shared values made her feel welcomed and appreciated. Although she initially felt nervous about meeting her partner's in-laws, she found their convivial nature and shared values made her feel welcomed and appreciated. Number 2. The clan, which had always prided itself on its strong kinship ties, came together under the same roof for a reunion that celebrated their rich hereditary traditions. The clan, which had always prided itself on its strong kinship ties, came together under the same roof for a reunion that celebrated their rich hereditary traditions. The clan, which had always prided itself on strong kinship ties, came together under the same roof for a reunion that celebrated their rich hereditary traditions. Number 3. Despite their diverse backgrounds, the convivial atmosphere at the family gathering allowed the in-laws to bond over shared values. Despite their diverse backgrounds, the convivial atmosphere at the family gathering allowed the in-laws to bond over shared values. Despite their diverse backgrounds, the convivial atmosphere at the family gathering allowed the in-laws to bond over shared values. Number 4. As they navigated the challenges of parenthood, they discovered that the spitting image of their child often reminded them of their own ancestors. As they navigated the challenges of parenthood, they discovered that the spitting image of their child often reminded them of their own ancestors. As they navigated the challenges of parenthood, they discovered that the spitting image of their child often reminded them of their own ancestors. Number 5. The family's hereditary characteristics highlighted the deep kinship and connections that brought the entire clan together under the same roof. The family's hereditary characteristics highlighted the deep kinship and connections that brought the entire clan together under the same roof. The family's hereditary characteristics highlighted the deep kinship and connections that brought the entire clan together under the same roof. I'm going to read each sentence one more time, starting with sentence number 1. Although she initially felt nervous about meeting her partner's in-laws, she found their convivial nature and shared values made her feel welcomed and appreciated. Number 2. The clan, which had always prided itself on its strong kinship ties, came together under the same roof for a reunion that celebrated their rich hereditary traditions. Number 3. Despite their diverse backgrounds, the convivial atmosphere at the family gathering allowed the in-laws to bond over shared values. Number 4. As they navigated the challenges of parenthood, they discovered that the spitting image of their child often reminded them of their own ancestors. Number 5. The family's hereditary characteristics highlighted the deep kinship and connections that brought the entire clan together under the same roof. All right, let's get ready to check our answers. I'm sure everybody did a great job writing these sentences down. Now, if you feel like it was too fast, you can definitely listen again. And when you listen again, you can adjust the playback speed to make the video go slower through the settings in the video. You can also check the description for timestamps, and this will help you listen to specific sentence numbers. So go ahead and check your answers. Let's go for number 1 first. Although she initially felt nervous about meeting her partner's in-laws, she found their convivial nature and shared values made her feel welcomed and appreciated. So let's break down the sentence a little bit. This part here, we're starting with the word although, which is a conjunction. And this shows us that because we're starting with the word although, we're starting with the conjunction here. This is a dependent clause. So because we're starting with the dependent clause, then we need a comma when the clause is finished. After that, the dependent clause starts. And we know that because it's independent, we have the subject and the verb right after, which shows us this is where this ends and this needs a comma, and we're starting something new here. Now you can also tell here something that's important to note. Felt, found, made. All of these main verbs are in simple past tense. So this shows there's consistency here. Another thing that we want to remember, apostrophe S, in-laws, which is a hyphenated word, in-laws belongs to the partner, right? And so because it's showing ownership or possession, we're going to have the possessive for apostrophe S here. Okay. Moving on. Their possessive adjective to show whose convivial nature and whose shared values it belongs to. So we do need that possessive adjective. I'm going to write plus adjective here. Make her feel welcomed and appreciated. These are adjectives too. Okay, so that's why these ed forms, that doesn't necessarily mean they're verbs. They're actually adjectives here, and they're feeling. Feel is the main verb here. So adjective, adjective. So looking at this, the main thing is remembering where does the comma go? And it's a good sign to have a subject and a main verb in the middle of the sentence. And that shows us, okay, there should probably be a comma here. We look over here, sure enough, there is a conjunction here. We're going to put con for conjunction. So that shows us even more that we have a dependent clause here and the independent clause would follow. So that calls for the comma. Another important thing is all the other punctuation, apostrophe S. We also have her as well, which is a possessive adjective, show that who the partner belongs to there, and so on. So make sure you feel comfortable with that and review it. Let's move on to the next one. So here we have two commas. The clan, which had always prided itself on its strong kinship ties, came together. So we have comma here and comma here. Now it's not because of dependent or independent clauses. Here is actually because we have a relative or adjective clause. So we have an extra piece of information, not necessary, but in there anyways. So I'm going to move this over a little bit. This is an adjective or relative clause. They have the same word, the same name here, adjective relative, or they're two different names for the same thing, rather. How do we know that? Because it starts with which, that, who, and so on. These are all really common relative pronouns to start the relative clause. You can also call them adjective pronouns. Had always. So in here, it's like its own little sentence in here to give more information, except we, instead of putting a capital letter and a period, we just surround it by commas so that there's a comma at the beginning and a comma after that clause there. And this clause is telling us more information about the clan, which is the subject. So this clause is to give more information about whatever the subject is, whether it's a person, a group of people, an object, or anything else, a thing. Then this relative clause here gives us more information about that. Now, relative clauses, they're not essential in a sentence. So if you remove the entire relative clause, it would make complete sense. You could say, the clan came together under the same roof for a reunion that celebrated their rich hereditary traditions. You could say that fine, but the relative pronoun A makes your writing seem more complex. So it's good to know how to use relative clauses with relative pronouns. And B just provides more context, more information. So that's great too. Another clause we have in here is a that clause, which adds even more information. And that clauses don't need any commas to separate it a lot of the time. And it starts with the word that and provides more information that way. So I'll write that down here also, that clause. There we go. Let's look at the next one. Despite their diverse backgrounds, a convivial atmosphere at the family gathering allowed the in-laws to bond over shared values. Okay, so similar to before, we're going to focus here on this first part. Despite, another conjunction. Right? So then what does that mean? Dependent clause. And this one's a little bit harder because we don't have that clear subject verb. We have to look a lot closer to find out what is the subject and what is the verb. Okay, so the convivial atmosphere, that's actually the subject. It's kind of like within like a noun phrase because it gives us more information at the family gathering. Allowed is the main verb. So that's why I mean like you have to look a little bit closer. You have to see that breakdown because this part, it's not like she, he, or whatever. This is the subject. At the family gathering, allowed, and this is our main verb here, the in-laws to bond. Because we have the main verb allowed, then the next verb has to be in the infinitive form, to bond. So when you have allowed something, then we say to verb infinitive form. Infinitive is just to plus the base form of the verb over shared values. There we go. Let's have a look at the next one. As they navigated the challenges of parenthood, they discovered that the spitting image of their child often reminded them of their own ancestors. Again, here, as, so. This one's a little bit more straightforward than the last one because they have clear subject, clear verb in the past tense. When we have this in the middle of a sentence, it tells us, okay, we're probably following a dependent clause. So we're going to probably need a comma. You look over here, we have the conjunction starting at the beginning. As they navigated the challenges of parenthood, perfect. Good. So this is the, again, dependent clause. Now moving into my independent clause, they discovered that the spitting image of their child often reminded them of their own ancestors. So that is an independent clause because it could stand perfectly by itself without the dependent clause. Okay, so they discovered that the spitting image of their child often reminded them of their own ancestors. The spitting image of their child. So we have possessive adjective. Child is an irregular noun. It's in its singular form, but doesn't really matter because this is in its simple past, ed. We don't need to think about rules for the present simple tense. Them of another possessive adjective. And so you could say reminded them of their ancestors. You could say that. That makes complete sense. But when you're adding the word own, you're adding more emphasis on this connection that they feel. So own is sometimes added, their own ancestors, often added to add more emphasis of ownership of the ancestors, who the ancestors belong to. Sometimes we put the possessive adjective and then the word own and then ancestors. For example, as I record this video, I'm using my own computer and I'm making the emphasis that I own the computer that I'm using right now. Lastly, the family's hereditary characteristics highlighted the deep kinship and connections that brought the entire clan together under the same roof. This one, we actually don't have any commas in the middle of the sentences, which is nice. The family's hereditary characteristics. Whoa, this is a lot. This entire thing is the subject. So hereditary is an adjective. Characteristics is the noun that we're really focusing on. And the families, this is just showing the possessive. Who owns these hereditary characteristics? The family does. Highlighted, it's in the simple past tense. So this noun here doesn't really have an effect on the verb here. Highlighted the deep kinship and connections. So again, highlighted verb and then the deep kinship and connections. That's the object of the sentence there. And you have adjective deep, noun kinship. So that's an adjective, that's a noun. And connections, this is another noun, but it's plural, of course, that brought the entire clan together. Highlighted is a simple past, so brought should be a simple past too for tense consistency. So tense consistency, simple past, the entire clan together under the same roof. All right. So here are some of the notes to help you understand the grammar behind it. Now, a lot of these words are actually kind of small, so they should be relatively easy to remember. If you have a longer word, like say convivial, for example, you should split it up into 3 smaller parts. Con, vi, vial. So split it up into these 3 parts to help you remember how to spell it. The biggest thing when I see phrases, so this is actually a phrase like an idiom that we like to use in English, under the same roof, means everybody living in the same house. The biggest thing I see in spelling of this is not really spelling at all. People just miss certain words. So people might say under same roof, for example, which is not correct. People might say under the roof, which is not correct. So you have to remember every single word. Because it's an idiom, it doesn't make sense if it's not the exact same phrasing here. Ancestors are another word. This one's a little bit more tricky. I put ancestors, like that. Now, the reason I would really focus on that middle bit is because the ses, the C and E makes the S sound. So a lot of people want to put ses like this, but that's not correct. So split it up into 3 and focus on the C in there. Don't forget that. Also, for hereditary, I would split it up into 3. Sometimes, if it doesn't split up into perfect parts, I either split it up in syllables or like convivial. For example, you can split it up into some syllables. Con is a syllable, vi is a syllable, and so on. The, if you wanted to, al. So you can split up into syllables. That's what some people do. And that helps with pronunciation sometimes. However, going back down to hereditary, number 5, I also split it into words I already know exist. For example, he is a word. Red is a word. It is a word. And airy is a common suffix. So he, read, it, airy. So that's how I like to split it up as well, not necessarily by syllables, but by words that I already know existed, smaller words that make a big word. So keep all these in mind. We are going to have a closer look at some of the vocabulary. So we have these terms here: in-laws, clan, convivial, kinship, parenthood, hereditary, ancestors, shared values, spitting image, under the same roof. These are words that we're going to see throughout the week for dictation. So make sure that you look up the definition and know what they mean. And you can also practice them in your own sentences and review the spelling. Spell it again and again and again. Because the more you review the spelling and memorize it, the easier spelling is going to be, because a lot of words have the same patterns that we see again and again in English. So review that. Besides that final note there, we are all finished. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you please like and subscribe, and please practice and do the best that you can in your English studying. Thank you so much, and I'll see you next time. Bye.